Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Simply ICS Cyber. I'm Don C. Weber, the cybersecurity guy.
And I'm Tom Van Norman, the OT guy. And today we have Sam Blaney. Sam, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Sam Blaney, retired Chief Warrant Officer 3. Spent, say, my last 13 years as an active guard reserve member with the Georgia National Guard. Transitioned from signal to cyber in that period and helped build, I'd say, one of the best cyber protection teams in the country, CPT 170 out of the Georgia Guard. Went on after retirement to work for the state of Georgia, Truist Bank, and Bylight Professional IT Services. Today, I'm a professor at University of North Georgia, teaching their cybersecurity platform. Anything they offer, I can teach it. So that's kind of what I'm doing.
Excellent. Thank you, Sam. Before we started to record here, you were telling us about your weekend with your students there doing a cyber exercise.
Sure. We traveled to Chicago, small team of 6 from the Cybersecurity Club, University of North Georgia, and participated in a exercise sponsored by the Department of Energy called CyberForce. And there were 100 collegiate teams competing, and it was a great opportunity to see the students in action, network, meet other people in the field, of course. And the scenario that they had to defend against was an attack on a offshore drilling platform. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Did they have anything physical, or was it all just virtualized?
It was all virtualized. Yeah, it was all virtualized, and they had an IT and an OT side of the house that they had to defend that had, kind of some built-in, problems with Active Directory that was connected, IT and OT. So that was kind of a pathway for the red team to, perform some of their evil activity. They had an HMI and a PLC they had to defend. They had a crane, a simulated crane that they had to get operational. And part of their scoring was that they had to keep the oil pumping. So my team ended up with I think 85% rate of operational rate during the exercise while they were getting attacked and trying to fend off the red team activity. So that was interesting. That was part of it all to make, and they had to explain the dollars and cents to keeping everything up, and then their losses compared to other teams. It's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool. How many people played?
So each team was somewhere around, I think six members, and there was 100. So there were 600 players, and
wow.
And then there was 100 or more coaches and mentors that were there, a part of it. And during the exercise, we're not allowed to sit with the teams. We're allowed to help them in the preparation phase. And they had like a 2 or 3 week prep phase where they had some assignments that they had to deliver on and analyzing the scenario, and then they had to do a full-on presentation to the C-suite executives on how they were going to come in there and do the response and make sure that the platform was still pumping oil and safety concerns were taken. So that all of that was kind of wrapped into it. It wasn't just, jump on and see how well you did. There was a lot of, admin and communication skills were involved there, and report writing skills and that sort of thing. So
very cool. And what type of things did the students run into?
Of course, they had it was a lot of identity access management at first. So they got to do some preparatory things, and they were looking at all the accounts that were built within both Active Directories and try and figure out, who worked in the OT side of the house and who worked in the IT side of the house, and trying to restrict their access to the OT things versus, they only need access to human resources or, whatever it is on the IT side of the house. There was a big, I'd say that was a big part of it. And they got to do a lot of that in the preparatory phase, working their Active Directory and then identifying the traffic that ran the OT devices and looking for anomalies there to, who was gaining access and trying to change settings and things like that. So
was that kind of like their first exposure to like the industrial control concept? I mean, I assume if they were your students, you'd probably already talked to them about it or even drilled them on it. But them and other teams was their warning order, their 2-week warning order, was that their first time even considering those technologies?
Some of them, maybe some of the newer students that were, part of the teams, but for the most part, they really understood, the difference between OT and IT, and they knew ICS. This was probably their first experience with an offshore drilling platform. And we did a lot of that in the preparatory phase. So we did research on, how offshore operates compared to onshore, how they're networked, and what the, key differences are there. So we did a lot of that to get them to understand what they were going into in exercise prep.
But how realistic was
it? They compete in other competitions around the country as well, and some of them are ICS related and some of them aren't. So yeah.
The how realistic was the event? The red team, blue team side, was it realistic? Did they have a white card a lot of things? Did they?
I'm sorry. They had some white cards, but I think that the bulk of it was technical, and it was already built into the exercise. There was kind of a CTF within it too, where they had a list of anomalies that they couldn't open up until exercise started, that were related, to questions to the exercise. So I think there was a lot of realism in it, as much as they could deliver. And it was hosted by, of course, DOE in one of their labs. So they had sponsors and input from some of the other national labs around the country, like PNNL and Sandia as well. So.
I mean, it sounded like there was a lot of teams there. Was there kind of like a preliminary? Did they have to do something to be invited and be able to come, or did just the DOE just accept all comers?
No, that's a good question, because they have to apply to go, and they had the exercise has grown so big they had to have it in a conference center. I think it's called Tinsley Conference Center there in Chicago. It used to be held right at the lab. I'm trying to remember the name of the lab. Let me pull that up. I'm kind of lost here for a second. The Regen, I think it is, Argonne National Lab. Was it was led by them. So, and they used to have it at the lab when they first started, but it's gotten so large and they've gotten so many applications, they had to find a bigger venue. And they had over 125 teams apply, but they only picked 100 for this particular year. So
okay.
It is a growing exercise.
Only 100. That's a lot of teams. That's a lot of
6 people each, 100 teams. That's a lot of teams. It was a big
lot
room.
Of teams. Very cool. So the students that participated, was it did they primarily do blue team defense, and then the exercise had their own red cell, or
yes,
how'd they do that?
Yes, yeah. The 100 teams were all blue. And our team had, I think, 2 of the students are also on the competition red team within the college. So, they brought some people that understood that side of the house, the offensive side of the house as well, and that helped them, I think. So purple and
cool.
Yeah. And me, I have an evil mind anyway, so I was always kind of working with them to try and get them to think that way, so they could anticipate, things to come within the exercise.
That I think that's great. Coming from a similar background that you came from, it's really hard to do, at least for me anyway, the blue side without knowing the red side. If how do you defend something if you don't know what your threats are, if you don't know what your attackers can do, or so that's good that they had that purple flavor with them.
Yes. Yeah, it's real interesting. And they're all young, man. And I would say, comparing myself to being a 19, 20, 22-year-old, they're a lot smarter than I was. So there is hope.
Sam, I don't think they had computers like that when we were 19 and 20. I'm not saying that you're old. I'm not saying I'm old or Don. All right, all three of us, I don't think they had computers back then.
Right.
Well, and I really like these. I really like these competitions. What you described, how they have to keep the services up and running, and that they can only do certain things, and whether it's in certain orders or ask permissions before they do things because they can't affect operations. I really like that realism in some of those in some of these competitions that we're seeing. So what was kind of their biggest takeaway, do you think, that they got out of especially the industrial control side of it?
I think, one of the biggest takeaways from my team, the captain of the team is actually in the class that I'm teaching this semester. So I got to interface with him a little bit this morning. Is the thing that nobody likes to do is the preparatory phase. They really think that they lost points on some of that, and they're trying to go to class and they're trying to do other things, and it's 6 people in a club and they're all going different ways with their education. So getting together, even with 2 or 3 weeks to prep for them to do some of those preparatory assignments was tough, and they want to do more prep work this next time.
So from a prep work standpoint, is that just reading and understanding the technologies? Is it getting tools ready?
Go ahead. Yes, tools ready. I think they kind of looked at some of their limits within the exercise, and they see where they could have built some tools either locally or hosted elsewhere. They couldn't add anything to the environment. They couldn't add any machines to the environment. So when they were trying to load, say, Splunk on one of the systems that was already running in the environment, it didn't really have enough memory or compute power to run as fast as or do the things that they wanted it to do. So I think next year, that's one thing that I'm going to make sure that I help them do is, build some kind of SIEM solution based on something open source that they can learn, and use that running locally on a machine that they can offload those, things that they have to work on, and offload that traffic to that machine and analyze it more in depth and faster.
You definitely have a lot of different SIM technologies to choose from.
Yeah.
So that's not going to be an issue.
Yeah. So you being the ICS guy, which one would you suggest for me to point them in the right direction on?
I run into Elk stack a lot.
Elastic.
Yeah. Yep. So that seems to be the one that most people use that I run into. Some of those other ones are just way too expensive. They price themselves out of some customers. So
yeah, and
Elastic's what I see.
Yeah, I mean, and typically those are built onto. I mean, there's different. You have the security onion versions, which are basically for an IT-based environment. Malcolm, which is kind of tweaked security onions so that it is running those protocol analyzers around industrial control protocols and so forth, but certainly that has to be configured correctly as well. I think some of the biggest challenges that people need to ask when they're thinking about doing this type of information gathering and analysis, are you looking at network traffic, or are you also gathering network traffic and system-based artifacts? And if you're only looking at network-based artifacts, which I find in a lot of these competitions, you don't really, you can't make changes to the systems. It's hard to get that syslog and stuff like that. Using some type of elk stack can be kind of expensive. Looking towards like Archime and something like that probably is a little bit better of a tool, just because it does that packet analysis. But certainly you have to think about the industrial protocol side of it. Archime is still kind of catching up, I think, on that, or at least the older versions that I have worked with in the past.
Okay.
Don's a fan of Malcolm.
Malcolm. Okay. I'm going to check that out.
Don and I, we've talked at lengths on the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah, the thing about Malcolm and the Security Onion is they're resource intensive, and so I mean you pretty much have to have a good piece of hardware. Running it out of a VM can be a challenge, and that's why I kind of point back to what are you actually trying to accomplish, identifying that first, scale up before you try to just deploy everything.
Yeah, and I think with this exercise, they definitely needed the endpoint logs. The network traffic, would have been good to, get them started and pointed in the right direction.
Mhm.
A lot of the endpoint logs would have helped them solve some of those problems faster and identify, in an easier way for them to
Yeah,
understand.
there's a lot of different steps to consider, like how to modify the configuration of those, Windows systems, both in Active Directory and the standalone Windows systems, that a lot of people don't think about, the HMI and other things that might not be a part of Active Directory. I would assume that they had a few of those things floating around in the control environment part, and that can be a challenge. It's things like processes, starts and stops aren't logged by default. So realizing that you have to actually go in and change the configuration or get permission to do that, turn that on. Sysmon, installing Sysmon, it's that's probably not installed. So these types of competitions really kind of help point out some of the limitations that you can find in some of these control environments that have to be addressed in the real world. So
Okay. Yeah, good stuff.
So Sam, what's next? You guys had this exercise or this event last weekend. What's next for the next 360 days?
So I mean, we'll run through this, and we'll probably do this exercise again next year. And then the team is going to do in February, I think February or March, CCDC regionals. So that's they do a regional, then they if they score high enough, they move on to nationals. So we're going to start trying to look at taking some of the things we learned from this exercise and moving on and preparing for that one. And go from there. And, I'm real excited about doing these things with them. When they asked me to do it, I'm like, oh yeah, I'll do those. And a lot of people shy away from it because sometimes, like I said, it gets boring for the coach and mentor at the actual event. You're kind of sitting there watching paint dry. But, seeing the excitement on their faces and what they do is, gives me, great joy that the next generation is actually going to be able to help support and defend. And then, for, I guess for me, I'm just going to stay, I think, try and, kick around the consulting world, try and work with another small company that has got a passion for helping state and local, especially the local governments, county and cities, like we were talking before the recording about, ICS systems that are owned or operated by municipalities, which in Georgia, my state, I mean, there's some counties that even own power generation, hydroelectric, and, trying to identify where they might need some help, get them on the right path. If they want to perform some exercises, this one company I'm working for, we're going to offer, either hybrid or tabletop, however they want to do it. And I guess, taking the background and experience I have in responding to these and then exercising in a lot of these spaces with you, Tom, that's where we met.
Yep.
I think it can help them.
I do a fair amount of tabletops throughout the year, and it's great to see the interaction. What I call them is it's forced socialization, and you definitely do not need to be the expert in the room as the moderator. You just need to ask the questions and watch the interaction grow.
Yeah.
That is the that's the one thing that I like about the tabletops is just seeing the interaction, because the day to day they may not talk to each other. The accounting folks may not talk to the logistics people might not talk to the IT folks or the OT folks, and just seeing that and hearing each side's opinion, it's priceless. Especially when they go and they the team votes on a move, and it's one of the ones that you put in there as a throwaway, and they can pick it and they defend it, and you're like, that's really good. We didn't think about that. So even as the moderator, right, you're learning stuff from the tabletop. So
Yeah, and I did some work with a lot of people in the Northern California Bay Area in my last position with Bylight, and they just wanted someone to come in and help them join the emergency support function of cyber with the whole emergency management thing. So taking IT people and cybersecurity people and putting them in the same classroom with the emergency response teams and getting everybody to understand, what tools they can use together to rapidly respond to an emergency, get the right message out there, ensure that the civilian populace understands what's happening with the services that might be affected, and get the IT people to understand that they don't have to go deep into the weeds to explain that to those emergency support people. They just need to get them, the right information in the right time to make, good decisions and deliver good reports to, their boss, the civilians, the people. And that was lots of fun putting, all those dissimilar groups together and using. California has a great ESF 18, Emergency Support Function 18, and so does the Bay Area. And we kind of, took all of that and took their policies that they wrote and used that as a base for, building a specialized course for those people. And we got people from all over the Bay Area. There were I think an audience of about 150 municipalities and agencies that were taking those courses. So that was fun to teach as well. And we had a little mini exercise at the end of that on day 3. It was a 3-day thing.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. I just got back from Kentucky. I got invited out to Kentucky to give a 30-minute talk in front of some of their team and some of the local politicians there in Kentucky. They actually had some people from South Carolina, National Guard out there. And so I got to, become a lot more familiar with what you guys are talking about just from interacting with them. And it was really cool because they were doing, as a part of that, they were doing their own kind of CTF that you just described, that your students went through as well. And that team is kind of the team that's running the Cyber Shield, the National Guard Cyber Shield. So it's really cool to see that the National Guard is doing a lot of this training, putting people through some of these paces. One of the things I talked about in my talk is, and I got this from one of my pilot buddies, is that people need to experience 10 types of situations before they are effective in those situations. Meaning that the first time you get in an incident response, you got the blinders on, everything's kind of chaotic, you really don't know what's going on and how to react. But the more you get exposed to that, the easier those interactions become. And so by the 10th time, now you're in military terms, combat effective, under those certain situations. So it's kind of cool seeing this happening throughout the National Guard.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you run it, you evaluate it, you run it, you evaluate it, and you just continue to improve. The cyber sticks lanes, just like the infantry does. You know, it's good to get that muscle movement down, and like Tom said, get their wheels turning. So, yeah, good times.
So talking about exercises and training and all that good stuff. Before the recording here, we're talking about AI. That article just a few days ago, they came out that yes, there we go. Created that malware, which is awesome and scary. And hold on, because it's only going to get worse, better. However, you want to look at it from here. I know that you were saying that you shared a little bit of that with your students this morning.
Yeah, of course. Like I said, I was trying to find something to do, and of course, I'm scrolling through social media, and I see this, report on Anthropic release a report on how AI agents were built to basically do, AI version of Red Team. So more than automation, and as they were training the AI to run the attacks, and I broke it down in the MITRE ATT&CK framework just so I could lecture today to my students, where they started in phase 1, phase 2, what they did, and how the AI continued to learn as it was running through the phases of the attack. And if you read that report from Anthropic, sometimes it was wrong, and when it was wrong, you could tell that the threat actor was either stopping it or interfacing with it to put it on the right direction. And then it would, start to learn, okay, I was wrong here. Those credentials that I found weren't really real credentials or the ones that I needed to do escalation of privileges. I'm just going to keep running from here. And, it got low level creds, and then it proceeded to escalate its access, and then it proceeded to find data, and then somewhere in there, most likely, I assume I got to read some more and get a better interpretation. It either found on some of the targets their organization's classification documentation, or started to figure out, based on what that organization's function or mission was, what type of data, and then classifying it as high, medium, and low on its own, without human interaction. And it got access to, full emails for the whole company, and started parsing through. I mean, just think about any organization, how many emails people save and, don't clean out their boxes. And this thing's just iterating through emails, looking for things that people are sending in there. And one of the examples I gave my students is, just suppose, programmers or people are working on a project, and they're just trying to save time, and they forgot to either hit the encrypt button, or they send it into clear, username and password in an email. If AI is going through email that fast, through the entire enterprise email that fast, it's looking for things like that, and it's finding mistakes, or people just trying to cut corners and get their job done. And it's tidbits of information that it puts together and then uses it for its next activity.
So the crazy thing there, you mentioned about hitting the encrypt button. I'm not sure that it's really going to matter soon, because AI can decrypt it, find those keys, find whatever they're looking for. It probably is not going to matter. I don't want to get the wrong impression that you should not encrypt things, because you absolutely should. However, I think we're going to see a time where AI is going to come and find those keys. And
I mean, the defenses, first of all, protect and protect, detect, respond, and recover. All of that stays the same. It's the same techniques. It's just the fact that these capabilities are allowing it to be automated. It's allowing those people with lesser skill sets to have a force multiplier. They don't need to hire out and bring people in that understand certain technologies. It's that information's all in there, so it's making it a little bit easier for them to do certain steps. But as Sam was talking about, they had to redirect it. They had to have a knowledge about how to properly do some of these things, or else it would have gone on a tangent. It would have gone down paths that were not necessarily helpful. It would have generated a whole bunch of extra documentation for, and using a lot of extra tokens for no apparent reason. So it's still something that requires a skill set. But at the end of the day, the reason why they're able to do that is they had beacons, they had communications that allowed them to get in there. Those are detectable just like any other beacon, and so forth. The AI was probably going out and just grabbing massive amounts of data. So all of those communications with those different endpoints, could it have been more surreptitious? Yes. But at the beginning, and in a lot of these situations that these going to be using this to attack, it's just going to go and do a bunch of stuff unless you specifically tell it to be surreptitious. And even when you do that, it's the same indicators, network-based and system-based artifacts, because it's unauthorized access, right? And remote access. So I don't really think that it's really just making it easier for people to do, and not necessarily more difficult to defend against, at least not right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I also thought of this, that the threat actor that did this probably didn't think it would do as well as it did, and it might have got out ahead of them. They were probably like, "Oh my, way too much. Is it too much? Is it too much for me to handle? Is it, I turn this thing loose and I let it go, and then it's just wandering around the neighborhood unsupervised, and there it goes, And I almost would have liked to be in the arena after they turned it loose and let it go, and wondered what their reaction was.
Well, Dragus just came out with a report about, and there was a competition around a cybersecurity AI agent that actually does a little bit better from an understanding of the architecture and coming up with vulnerabilities and issues. And so there's going to be definitely a workflow in the future for AI services that are more dedicated to cybersecurity, but also integrating that information with things like the code generation and implementation AIs. And so there's going to be this workflow that people come up with to do analysis and implementation of attacks, whether it's attacks and defenses. I think where we have an issue as cybersecurity professionals is that the attack teams, the bad guys, the threat actors, they actually have a better advantage around all of this, because I can't go in as a pen tester, gather this information from my clients, and upload it to the cybersecurity AI or Claude. I can't upload their data. Because now it's out there. So how do I do this offline? How do I have these resources that will take these models and mimic this type of stuff? I don't know that yet. Maybe somebody else. I mean, obviously other people are thinking about it. I don't have those capabilities yet.
Yeah, we're working with localized or controlled LLMs to create, proprietary AI, I think is what some people are already working on. And it all depends on, what LLM they're working with, and how much compute power they have when they're working on this.
And that's the hard part.
I'm sure that the right people are doing this in the right places right now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, based on our previous experience with some of the things that we did back in the day. But what what I explain to my students is, you go to these exercises and we're exercising in a contained environment, the way the Western world does. But some of our threat actors that are trying to level the playing field, their exercise environment is the real operational internet. So they don't have any left and right limits like you do. They're just out there, building that AI agent and turning it loose.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Sam, hey, I want to continue this conversation and stuff like that. We're definitely a little bit over time right now. Where can people find you? Where can they expect to see you in the future?
Yeah, you can definitely find me on LinkedIn, Sam Blaney, on LinkedIn. And you see me in the future, hopefully consulting for some people that are trying to help small government right now. And that's been my passion. I mean, that was my whole master's thesis on, helping, resource constrained small governments, get their stuff right because they're most at risk.
Well, I appreciate you doing that. Thank you very much, sir. Tom, any last words, sir?
No, I echo what Don says there. Sam, thank you for everything you do there. This has been a great podcast recording here, learning about your students this past weekend and some other things going on in the industry. And look forward to catching up soon with you.
Yeah, you guys as well. Thank you very much.
All right.
Yep.
Thanks, everybody, and take care.